Welcome, my name is Robert Axelsen again. I'm going to be talking about the Quasar framework, and the working title is using Quasar to supercharge your app development. Just very shortly about me, my name, my Twitter handle, GitHub handle, most places handle. I'm a software developer and meetup organizer and community enthusiast. And if you want to hear more about my journey from self-taught to getting my first developer job, you can see it on my website. It was also recorded by the same guys as recording here now. So let's get to business. What is Quasar? I don't know if you guys have had a look at it already, but on the surface, it looks like a framework on top of Vue.js. So it's a framework on top of a JavaScript framework on top of a JavaScript library. Sounds strange? Let's look into what that means. I just want to cover this straight away, because I was confused in the beginning. You might have heard about Nox.js, and their slogan is Universal Vue.js Application. On the surface, it sounds about the same as what Quasar is doing, but it is not. Their focus is on the server-side rendered Vue.js. It doesn't have to be. They have an option for SPA as well. But that is not a competitor to Quasar. It's rather something that can complement Quasar or be used together. Quasar, on the other hand, also is sort of like, the slogan sounds like it's the same, but the focus is on building responsive websites, progressive web apps, hybrid mobile apps that look native, and Electron apps using the same code powered with Vue. Just a bit briefly first on the history of Quasar. I've labeled it visionary history because one of the highlights of Quasar that I found is that straight from the beginning, the creator, Razvan Stonescu, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly, he had a focus on having one code base that you can deploy to all the devices. You should take care of your code, and Quasar takes care of the rest. This started without Vue.js back in 2015. So not that long ago, but in web dev world, I guess it's ancient. The first version, as I said, was written without Vue.js. And since then, there's been 4 major rewrites. One was to introduce Vue.js. He said that when he found Vue.js around version 0.10, he was sold on the design of the framework, and he decided to use it. Then they switched as a collective project to Vue.js 1, which required a lot of rewrite, and then the same for Vue.js 2. And the current release is also an 80% rewrite to allow for new capabilities. A fun fact is that back when it started, there was a lot of external packages used. jQuery, Hammer.js, Momus.js, and they were all eliminated eventually as web technology allowed for it. So jQuery was no longer necessary, Hammer.js was replaced by an in-house, lightweight but powerful Quasar version, and the same goes for Moment.js. Okay, but why should you use Quasar? So again, back to what we already mentioned, you should have one code base to rule them all and let Quasar do the rest. Quasar comes with its own CLI tool, which handles the init phase and the build process for you. Abstract stuff away so you can just get started coding. It also has a great system for theming and handling the CSS part, the styling. There are a lot of pre-built components ready for you to use out of the box for most of the stuff you need. In my experience, I keep getting surprised by stuff that I'm sure that's not in Quasar. Oh, wow, there is a component for that, or a helper or something that can help me get that done. There's helpers and utilities. So, for example, stuff to format dates. You don't have to, import Moment.js. You can rely on the framework. And nifty helpers and other utilities. There's a dynamic webpack config, so you don't have to deal with that unless, of course, your project demands that you tweak and do your own specific setup. And also, the documentation is great. There's also an active forum plus an active Gitter chat room group. In my experience, the main maintainer or the creator is also very approachable, so it's easy to get feedback. I've had an issue posted about something that a feature request, and 2 days later it was already a pull request merged by one of the contributors. So it's going to be in the next release. Rashwan says it's full stack in the sense that for the front-end developer, it should cover everything. So not full stack front-end, back-end, but full stack as in all you need in the front end, and back-end agnostic. You write once, and you deploy everywhere. And back to also, as I mentioned before, but in terms of benefits, it's active, not just an active community, but active development. Stuff is happening and improving, and all the time with the focus on having a visionary philosophy where you should just code and Quasar takes care of the rest. The next release, 0.15, will have one starter kit only for all target deployments, whereas it's been some wrappers and not complicated, but some more commands to get stuff up and going, whereas that will be even further simplified. There's a Chrome extension coming. There is server-side rendering in the works, so which will be Quasar based, or an option to use it also instead if you prefer Quasar together with Nuxt.js that we talked about earlier. And there again, continuously improving the workflow for developers. You can focus on your code and let Quasar do the rest. I want to touch on the fact that it is open source. On top of Vue.js, you would expect that. If you do like the framework and benefit from it and want to use it, I would highly encourage you to try to contribute back. You can obviously do so with code or your time by having a look and helping people on the forums and in the community. And you can also donate either via the official Patreon page as a patron, and I know also that the creator can, if you want to do it business-wise and need an invoice, there's not an issue at all. He can provide you with an invoice. Okay, so some demo time. I won't go too into detail, but I show you some of the highlights that I've been speaking about. We'll cover the CLI tool, so just getting up a fresh project, initting and changing some, or adding some Quasar components. Yeah. Before we get to the actual code, I just want to mention very briefly, I work at Zipwise. We are hiring. Currently, we have a role for a full stack developer. We also have other roles, and we are continuously hiring. So if you see this later, feel free to send an email or have a look. So to make it easier for all of us and to have this for you as a reference in the slides, I have some cheat sheet commands. Let me see if I can blow it up. Okay, so you would obviously npm install first if you haven't got it up, and all of this is documented in the great documentation at quasarframework.org. And then for us to get going now, if I just make like a Vue folder, and now I want to create a project, I would do Quasar init default takes us default, by default gives us the theme of the material look. And then you could have other, or actually the default refers to webpack configs and such, but just assume that we're going to do the default now. And then I'm going to do something like hello for the project name. And then it's generating it for us. I see now that the gray here is not so good, but we don't need it. Let me check if I can change the colors. It just made it worse. Slightly better. Okay, so we go into the folder, the project that we just created, and then we need to do the npm install, and then insert some joke about not using yarn and how silly npm is and such. It's not that bad, but I'm sure most of us have seen this before. We'll have a look at the package.json to see what comes out of the box. There's Vue router, there's Babel, there's Webpack, etc. And then once we start the dev tool, we'll have a web server ready on port 8080 for us to check out. Cool. So package.json, dependencies, some Quasar specific stuff, Vue router. You can obviously add Vuex yourself on top. There's some more config involved with that, but I won't go into detail on that here. Babel, ESLint, CSS loader, ES6. This is more for the people that are more interested, but again, you can just use this with a CLI tool quickly and get going and test yourself. Then now, if I'm not mistaken, yeah. So you see here, we've gone through the steps down to npm install. There's says Quasar dev mat. If we don't put the mat as in material theme, we have both iOS and material theme ready for us with this Quasar init. If we don't specify it, mat is default. So we do like so. It's building. Great. So out of the box, let's just see. Yeah, we can see better now. It's very plain, it's very simple. It's just up and ready for us to modify. We can have a brief look at the Quasar documentation. If we go here to components, there's a lot for us shown with great examples. So, if we, for example, go here, we can see how we have components, and we're going to be able to take what we see here, or in the desktop view, and take that into our app quickly with using Quasar components. And there's detailed information, plus the examples, and plus the options available for the different components. Let's have a look at the code. So, if I now go into the components, and now we're in the code of what we have, the project we've started. This is the view that we saw just out of the box. For the sake of the demonstration, I'm just going to remove everything that is here now in the template tag. And with the hot reload, we can just start with something like this. And so we've stripped it down. What I should mention that you saw the menu structure. There's easy, and it was already a layout tag. There's easy to just give it some parameters, and it'll change which side the sidebar is on, which sidebar is visible, the footer, etc. So I'm oversimplifying stuff now just to show you quickly some components, but there's tons of stuff that is available there for you out of the box. So I can now do the first step just to show you how we would have a cue card, for example, which is a component, a card component that comes out of the box from Quasar. Or not. So, in here we'll just put like Q card title. And what's happening now is that it'll give us some errors because we're using components that we haven't imported. So in this, here I'll just add the Q card, and we need the Q card title. Spot the error. So, and then we also need to put it into the components here. Spot the error. Q card title. Okay, let's read the error message. One root element, okay. So I'll wrap this in a div. Vue basics. Woohoo! And out of the box, you see it looks very plain and simple, but this is a structure for using the components, taking the attributes and the options that you can modify, color, inline, flat, square, etc. But what we can do now to take it one step further very quickly is that we can, a little bit troubleshootingly, I'm sure, just take the example that we saw in the beginning. We take away this. We make sure I can paste, and then we do something like this. And now I pasted. Okay, good. Let's try again. Awesome. So now we see, I guess we can all see together now that I have more components, Quasar components, than we had in the other example. Let's just keep the ugly formatting. So I need to get Q card media. I remove this one since we don't have the asset for the example. We need icon, but I think we already have it here. So let's say Q card, Q rating, separator actions. So Q card, Q rating, Q card separator, Q card, Q rating, Q icon we need, Q card actions, okay. Q icon is here. Then we need Q card actions. Then we'll try and add those three here. Okay. Damn it, indentation. Okay. Let's just pretend my editor config and everything is set. Woo! I didn't like that. Whoa. Whoa. Great. So we got something here. It's not so easy to see, and there's no color. I think we get an error now related to not having a state for the rating, but we could create that. But you get the idea. Okay, cool. So the approach is like so. You have so much out of the box, covering everything from pop-ups, modals. You guys seeing this okay, the mobile thing in the side? Here you have example of, it's not so easy, let's go desktop view. Modals. Infinite scroll examples with animation. You can check out the different forms. And all of these things is just a color property away to, you can easily theme it. So you set like primary, secondary, etc. colors that you want, and you can tweak it beyond that with the theming. This really, it looks like Google Inbox material theme out of the box. Rating, we have some, for example, the not the action sheet, but the floating action button, like so, for example. Don't know if we can see a good example here. Yeah. These things you can play around with. And in the documentation, to round up, we also have stuff to help us with, for example, icons. We can choose between different, I clicked the wrong. You can choose between different icon sets, font also, material icons, Ionics, Icomon. We can deal with the typography. For CSS, it comes out of the box with stylus, but you can easily swap it around for Sass, so whatever you prefer on that front. With the utilities and helpers, there's also for animations, there are components to use. And for the utilities, you can easily handle dates without involving moment.js, DOM utils, formatter utils, stuff that is there ready for you. Okay. So, I think we'll round it off there. Thanks, and please ask questions after the applause.